Greetings, people of the internet. It is I, Shadow01. And if you could hear by my tone, I am just quite a bit agitated. I'm just quite a bit annoyed. This is obviously a message to the Need for Speed fans pre-existing today. Now, as many of you know, I am playing Ridge Racer. I was playing Ridge Racer. I was using it for footage. I was even having a hard time trying to play through this game. And really, it was fun. However, this is not the main issue I have. The main issue is Need for Speed, the fan base, and the game series as a whole. So, let's go back in time. In 1994, the very first EA racing game, well, I don't think it was the very first, but it was one of the few famous racing games made by EA starting in 1994 and was sponsored by Road and Track, which the game was called Road and Track Presents The Need for Speed. Originally, it started off as a racing game where you race down in the interstate or the highway with some sports cars and or some supercars that we may never in our lifeline be able to get within due time, or that some of us may have it, but still, we wouldn't be able to drive insanely fast with it in the real world. Now, we go on further, and the same cycle continues on until Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. And that was when Black Box Studios was competing against Criterion Games for the title of making Need for Speed games. To take the wheel, obviously. And Black Box Studios won. Which brought in the series that we all knew and loved eventually at one point, which was an alternation to Need for Speed, much like Need for Speed V Rally being an alternation of Need for Speed, where it was mainly about rally racing and that you could race with other racers. But this alternation took place in the city, and it mainly involved car customization and modifications. Pretty much the car culture when it revolves around tuners and stuff like that. Probably even car meets in the real world. I had liked that since Need for Speed Underground 1, Need for Speed Underground 2, Most Wanted 2005, and the Carbon. And then after that, I've never played any other Need for Speed game that resembled into that. However, I did play Undercover for the DS, and I played some oddball Need for Speeds. I played Need for Speed Shift, and by far, I liked it, even though the people couldn't respect the idea in regards to track Le Mans racing at some certain point. However, I could. It realistically, it's criminally underrated. Anyways, eventually at one point, I probably would say around NFL 2008, that's when things started to shift over for EA. Because, if I'm not mistaken, EA was already rated the worst game development company within the US the second time. And that when this occurred, they decided to live up to that name. Which is why they decided to screw over Black Box Studios, the few Canadians that made Need for Speed games the way we all knew and loved. Really, a majority of us think that this is the true Need for Speed. That no one understands. No one understands that is the true Need for Speed. It literally is not. It's just an alternation within the whole entire franchise as a whole. It's being said for the same as to Need for Speed V Rally and Need for Speed Shift. The only thing that makes Need for Speed Underground to Carbon much more different is the underground street racing, the car customizations. Eventually, at one point, we got to go against cops, and the story was much more better. Realistically, the old can never be beaten. However, the old cannot be revived either. That's when I begin to realize in due time, when I no longer see Black Box Studios working on a new Need for Speed game. All I see is new Need for Speed games being developed by Criterion Games, or even ghost games. And that's when the sudden realization is that Black Box Studios is no longer the concrete solution to EA when it comes to good Need for Speed games. Actually, no, it's no longer the concrete solution to good games anymore. EA decides to focus on games that are actually bad and that they want to make as much money as they could with in-game purchases. Now, starting off with Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010, the very first Need for Speed game, well, second Need for Speed game that Criterion made so far in gaming history, had existed in 2010. And it was really new, it was really polished, it was very smooth. However, we reached to the standpoint when DLCs were being added within that game that we start to realize that things are starting to shift over. They were starting to change. And it wasn't only just applying for Need for Speed as far as I'm concerned, mind you, but it applied to many other games that EA made so far. This was the realization that made us think that some of us would have predicted that EA was actually going to ruin themselves over, and that they would give their customers a bad experience nowadays. Some of us may have predicted that. I never had any predictions before. I had to look through and see what was true and what wasn't true. Then I get to the realization, and I'm no longer within the community. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't even say I was a part of the community before, but I liked Need for Speed once before EA Games decided to take their own selves to living up to the name of being the most hated company and making it their own downfall. Like a long time ago before all of that ever occurred to be the case. But now, it just faded out away from me. And realistically, what I could concur is that I never would ever want to play another Need for Speed game. Since EA is going to ruin themselves over. I mean, at times I probably will, just for the sake of it. And the reason why I say for the sake of it is because EA doesn't care about making a good game anymore. That's being flat out said. I've literally stated that before in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010. And then let's get to Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012. People hated that game. I get the idea. A lot of people hated the game so far. It was a burnout game pretty much, with a lot of reused assets. I understand. But what made this a much more worst case scenario for EA to living up to the name of being the most hated company inside the United States is that they've actually made pay to win content within this game. And it should be blatantly obvious that I am talking about the Hennessy Venom GT car. Well, either the Cabrio or the non-Cabrio versions. Like the roofless or the roof variants of that car. That car was ridiculously OP and everyone did not like how it was. It's being said because no one literally could beat the car inside of that game. EA surely knew enough of what they did. I shouldn't even say this as of yet. Criterion Games was doing all of this. I mean, surely enough, some of us would complain that this was their fault. This was Criterion's ideology. They were the ones that decided to ruin Need for Speed as a whole because they decided to make this game. It could have made this game die out as a franchise. The career could have been ended right there. Yes, I understand. It could have ended right there. However, it wasn't Criterion's fault that this was to be the case. Because honestly, it wasn't. Criterion wanted to push something even further. They wanted to try to build in with the stories as Black Box would have done so for the Need for Speed franchise before they got shut down. I mean, they've been doing that for quite a while, and Criterion wanted to live up on that ideology too. However, with all this, all of what EA is doing now at times to live up the name of being the worst game development company in the United States, they decide to live on that name. They decide to give Criterion a tight deadline to make the game snappy, to to cut short time, just develop it right there for 3 weeks or probably so, and just release it right away. Which means Criterion wasn't able to finish the game in due time to make it the way it should have been. It was about to be called Need for Speed Most Wanted 2 for Pete's sakes. Realistically, it's not Criterion's fault. I can vouch for Criterion as much as I like. It literally is not their fault because they were given a short amount of time just to be developing Need for Speed Most Wanted 2 or Most Wanted 2012. The one who was actually at fault was EA. So in all honesty, you should Need for Speed fans, you need to take your complaints away from Criterion Games. And you need to take them straight towards EA. Because EA is the one that made these decisions overall. Not Criterion. Criterion had no intended plans to do this kind of stuff. EA as a whole. But we still just nut on the ideology of let's go ahead and hate on Criterion controversy. This is disappointing. Honestly, this is one of the fewest reasons why I decided to be freelance in the first place. Because to me it just sounds like people don't really get the bigger picture. I'm not literally, they're not idiots. Black Panther is not an idiot. Guapi Trey's not an idiot. Yeah, Map's not an idiot. Everyone is not an idiot. They're just not understanding it any better than anticipated. Well, I mean, Guapi Trey probably picked up to the case at one point. However, he doesn't understand that this was not Criterion's fault. Nor was it Ghost Games. It was all mainly EA. However, I cannot say it was not Ghost Games' fault for making a properly developed Need for Speed game because, well, let's just face it, they tried, but at the most certain point they failed. Like, let me think of it like this: Black Panther had wanted a Need for Speed game that resembled the Underground version, and this was like after Rivals. Rivals was a good game, but I never picked up on it for the previous years during initial release or even after until now, probably even last year. Wait till like 2 years later, we reached up to Need for Speed 2015. Jesus fucking Christ, that game. I'm saying that not in a good way either. Well, I'm not saying that in a good way either way. It's just, how can people be so supportive about a game like this? I mean, yeah, sure, the graphics look really amazing on a game like this, whether you're playing on a PS4 or an Xbox One. However, what defeats the purpose of this realisticality by looks is the fact that you still got the break to drift in the game, that mechanic. And let me be fair with you. The whole entire office at Ghost Games, when this was being developed, was mostly consistent of Criterion and DICE workers. Ultimately, these guys are still basically not black box studios. In other words, they're just pretty much the same. They're just pretty much a merge of both teams in one location to make a single game series. And their life was cut short to be making Need for Speed what people would have liked it to see. And honestly, the way to say that this was promising didn't really catch my interest to a certain point. Here's how it goes as to why I say this. It's because Black Box Studios, they were legendary when they made Need for Speed Underground to Carbon. They were pretty awesome dudes. They were pretty cool Canadians that made this alternation possible. I just never thought that they would have done so before way long ago, like before they were a studio and they decided to make games. That they were acquired by EA and that they would be making games for them. However, that idea never came into 1994 when Road and Track presents Need for Speed Speed was there. Plus, Need for Speed is way more older than I am. I'm born in 2001. Keep in mind. However, what doesn't... what can I can't even think of what I'm trying to say. What I want to say is that what they did was pretty awesome. And I get the idea that people wanted to keep on seeing it. However, that is a thing that will never live up to people's expectations anymore. And let me say why. Is because after Need for Speed, pretty much either Undercover or The Run, Black Box was starting to shut down because they were not making any more good sales on Need for Speed overall. Which sucks. I really liked how they made the Need for Speed their own alternation of Need for Speed as a whole. And that whatever they did, I feel like no other studio could have done better than them. And I feel like Black Box Studios would forever be loved by everyone. However, it just feels like that memoriam to Black Box Studios will never rest to be the case because everyone still wants the same thing that existed in Underground and think that was the original thing as a whole. One, it's not original. I mean, it's original to Black Box's part, to Black Box's alternation of the Need for Speed series. However, it was never original way back in the 90s. And that's because the older games were like pretty much like 9 years older than Underground, the very first Need for Speed game. And this is being said because, well, the alternation occurred in 2003 when Underground 1 was made. It was just awesome. And to see it gone really sucks after Black Box Studios shut down. However, it will never occur to be the case to return after that. And people just... You got these shitbaggers of people who actually complain about seeing it again. I mean, I respect the idea of people like car customization, story mode, and characters and stuff like that. And the car community being a fucking coolest thing to ever see inside of a racing game. However, you cannot rely on another studio inside of EA games to actually make that possible. Because literally, they're gonna fail. They're gonna be less superior than what Black Box Studios did so far. And this is me saying this because of Ghost Games. People praise the living fuck out of Ghost Games. I don't know why. I mean, sure, car customization and stuff like that. But that is the most stupidest way to praise this fucking disastrous shitbag of a studio that ever existed. I'm pretty certain they had the passion to do this. However, this passion, I just feel like it's wrong. Because the way they're doing it, the way that I see this, Need for Speed 2015, and Need for Speed Payback, is just the two pieces that led Ghost Games to its quick, steadfast, disastrous downfall. And ultimately, it's their fault for this kind of stuff to occur in the first place. Disaster number one was Need for Speed 2015. People, you can go ahead and complain the living shit out of me about this game. Oh, but this game was the best game we've ever had. We had the Toyota Supra Mark IV inside of this game. We even had some car customization. I don't want to hear it anymore. Shut your mouth, okay? Listen to what I have to say. The gameplay physics and mechanics, it's still the same thing as all the other games Criterion made so far. And it's because, like I said, Ghost Games is basically a mix of Criterion and DICE workers. So the way they go about turning at a certain majority is the break to drift feature. Which mainly defeats the whole purpose of Need for Speed 2015, based on it's supposed to resemble realisticality. And yet this break to drift feature doesn't resolve on that realisticality as a whole. And this is what literally led to the downfall of that. Another thing that irritated me the most, actually, it made me hate Ghost games when this was to be the case, to be what everyone liked so far. It made me hate Ghost games forever. And no one could convince me otherwise that I shouldn't be able to hate on it. I will hate on it for my whole entire life until probably many years later I pass away. And I'll continue to say that I hate this studio since they basically want to be. Well, they want to try to ruin the gameplay experience for me. I mean, surely enough, this was probably EA's decision. But still, it probably wasn't EA's decision per se, but probably. Online only. Who the fuck wants to play a Need for Speed game with online only? I mean, it literally made sense when Need for Speed World was existing and that you need an internet connection to actually play this game. But 2015? Are we living in the Need for Speed World lifestyle again? I mean, this is stupid. If we're playing worldwide with a lot of other players that like Need for Speed around the whole entire fucking globe of Earth, then yeah, it would make sense. However, I cannot say that this happens to make sense at all, considering the fact that there's no literal. This only occurs to online. I mean, I don't want to be playing this game because it has an online connection only issue. And that's being said because I want to play a game and I want to play single player. I don't want to be going straight out into the game, try to go and try to find an internet connection just to play fucking single player mode. Like, that is the one thing I hate about this, and that is the one thing that will make me hate Ghost games forever. And it wants me to puke based on what people think about Ghost games being better, or even somewhat good, than Black Box Studios as a whole. It's just so fucking absurd. No studio, as I said, is never going to be better. At this rate, the Ghost Games trying to be the reincarnation of Black Box Studios is the worst statement anyone could possibly ever say. And that's me saying that because people probably never said it. However, I have a feeling that people could have tried to say that as far as I'm concerned. And honestly, this is just leading me to say that Ghost Games, yeah, no. It deserved to be downgraded. It deserves to be EA Gothenburg because they couldn't make a single good Need for Speed game at all. And literally, it's their own fault for this. Not ours, not EA's, theirs. Because EA Games is trying to focus their game studios and their own game titles on making money than just to be better quality made games for people to actually enjoy. And that being said, because eventually at one point they prefer to look over how many game sales that the games they made so far, if they're good or not. And literally what Ghost Games did is way more worse than what Black Box Studios and Criterion Games could ever done as a whole. So you can't just be sitting in your ass trying to tell me that Ghost Games is really good. Like, this is literally the most stupidest thing I've ever heard. You might as well just shut up with that. I'm not gonna put up with that stupid excuse. Another game, Need for Speed Payback. Okay, so why do I hate this game? Well, I hate the fact to say that this game is not literally a Need for Speed game. Instead, it just feels like a goddamn ripoff of the Fast and Furious movies. Why do I say that? Look at the story, look at the cutscenes, play through it, and you'll start to understand why I say that. Or look over at an old YouTube video that has this kind of gameplay, and you'll get the bigger picture of what I'm talking about. Like, this is literally a ripoff of Fast and Furious to begin with. I liked it better when Need for Speed was just about racing and that was about it. Not all this heist BS that Ghost Games decided to put into this game. Honestly, that is stupid. They're better. Like, EA Games, Need for Speed is better off being a racing game, not a fucking ripoff of Fast and Furious. If that were to be the case, if they wanted to try to make if Ghost Games wanted to try to make a movie-based video game, why didn't they try to go through making Need for Speed, but based off of the Need for Speed movie that we had a few years ago when it had that kick-ass Ford Mustang? Like, that would be my number one question to them, why they didn't even bother to do that. However, they're not to be the case because they're just EA Gothenburg. And another thing that made me hate them the most is that after you buy this game, I mean, this game's a pay-to-play game, for Pete's sakes. Just like any other game we have out there. But inside this game is in-game purchases. What the fuck? Why would I want to use my real-life money just to buy all this in-game purchase BS? I don't want to be doing that. I really don't want to be doing that to say for the case of cards to use for a roulette system. Because there's a roulette system where you have to use your cards and you have to be so lucky enough to get a good set of parts for your car. But literally, this is the one thing that made me hate them. Because the whole entire roulette system at a parts shop is so fucking biased, and that it's realistically difficult to actually get cards to actually use for this machine, for this roulette machine inside of the parts shop per se. Realistically, it's hard, it's semi-hard, it's somewhat too most likely hard to try to get some cards, and they're being sold on the game. I mean, for fuck's sakes, if Ghost Games was gonna make this possible just to EA's likings, I don't understand why the game couldn't just be couldn't be for free like a fucking mobile game. Because honestly, this is pretty much EA Games just pretty much pulled off a mobile game development company move and just added in-game purchases to the game. Like, this is unnecessary for a game that is pay to play. And in this case, this is Ghost Games we're talking about. Not even Black Box Studios or even slightly Mad Studios would even want to do something like that. They know better than just to do whatever the hell they think is right and what is wrong. And it's pretty much the same thing as Need for Speed 2015. The only thing that just got removed is the online only play. And even though I am happy enough that the online play is no longer inside a is not a case to be inside a Need for Speed Payback since 2015, I still fucking hate it because it's got those in-game purchases that probably will want to force me to actually try to get cards in order to actually get lucky enough to get some good parts just for any certain car I would like to drive inside a Need for Speed Payback. And literally, this is, I would even go far as to saying that this game is way more worse than Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012. This is literally the most hated game of all time. I think so. I'm not saying that it's true, but it's a possibility. Then we got Need for Speed Heat. Okay, so Need for Speed Heat was basically much more newer than all the other ones. It was much more fresh, it was much more newer, it was much more better than all the other ones. But my main issue is this, is that it still has the car randomly jumping for no apparent reason bug. And realistically, that's annoying. It's annoying to the part where you're trying to get through a race, you're almost near the finish line, and your car will happen to jump for no apparent reason, and that screws you over your opponent's going to gain the ability to gain the chance to pass through you, take your first place position, and win the race. This is slightly irritating. I just don't understand why people could go to say that they could respect this studio based on how fucking shitty they did so far in the previous years. And I'm being literal at that case. I'm not even joking about it. You can tell by my tone, I am never joking about all of this. And really, they couldn't, in all honesty, this leads to be the case. Ghost Games could never, ever make a good Need for Speed game, which means they don't get a good, decent amount of sales. And they ended up downgrading. And it's nobody's fault. Probably EA's, because people be saying that it's EA's. But EA has a purpose for doing this. It's most likely no one's fault but Ghost Games, because they decided to screw themselves over. And honestly, trying to say that people wants the same way as as Black Box would have done so for Need for Speed, it ain't ever gonna happen. It ain't ever gonna happen. So you might as well just give up on that already. I'm just saying, because so far I've already established that Ghost Games already did way more worse than what Black Box Studios did. And whatever Black Box Studios did can never be better, can never be outbested at all. And this is me picking up in the case when Black Panther said that whatever we had as of now is much more better than what we have back then. Honestly, that just wants to make me puke. It makes me want to puke both my breakfast, and it wants me to puke my own lunch too. Because when what we had could never be outbested. I mean, I hardly see any good customization in Need for Speed Heat or even Need for Speed 2015. Because the way I see it inside of Need for Speed Underground 2, I could be able to change the audio systems in the trunk of the car. I could be able to change how the door opens, and so for the hoods, and even put spinners on the car as well as some hydraulics. And ultimately, the customization, I'm just saying that the customization is pushed even further, and it was much cooler inside of Need for Speed Underground 2 than it ever was for any other game. I'm just saying, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't hate Need for Speed Most Wanted 05 or the first Underground or even Carbon, because from Most Wanted 2005 and the Carbon has really good story. Like, and even Undercover, since I've tried that once before, they all have a good story. They have interesting characters. They have quite intriguing storylines that was shared within. That's what Black Box impressed me on. However, we look at Ghost Games, I just see they like to fuck everything up. And that is me literally being honest right there. So realistically, I can say, to say the least, I can come to the conclusion at least to say that Black Box Games can never be outmatched. And Ghost Games is the worst studio to ever exist. And the Need for Speed that people are so desperately wanting is not the real Need for Speed. The real Need for Speed is any kind of Need for Speed that goes. And I wanted to pick up on that right now. I just haven't gotten to just yet. So, Need for Speed is anything goes. If it's about interstate or highway racing with sports and supercars, that's Need for Speed. Or if it's about rally racing with multiple different opponents in rally cars, it's also Need for Speed. If it's about car customization and modifications as well as the story mode and is taking place inside the city, that's also Need for Speed. Or last but not least, If it's about Le Mans track racing and that you're given a wide array of cars that you could drive and probably even modify in the process while racing through the Le Mans tracks, whether it's through campaign or not, that should be obvious enough, and you should understand now that that is also Need for Speed. Need for Speed is any kind of related racing. And even Kudo HS had said once before that Need for Speed is anything goes. No matter how much you try to slice it, the point still rests to be the case. And there is nothing you could do to convince us otherwise that this is not to be the case. I mean, if it weren't to be the case, how about you guys elaborate to me on that? How about you elaborate to us? We'd be convinced if you could actually try to explain to us. Don't go rambling on about trying to say that Need for Speed is one thing and that the Need for Speed has an identity crisis. I've picked up on what Need for Speed was and what Need for Speed is. Need for Speed is universal. And even Kudo HS had said that. So honestly, I can't. I mean, I like Need for Speed, but I can't be putting on stuff like this because of how absurd the people's thought process is within this community. I mean, like, this is one of the fewest reasons why I prefer to be freelance instead of sticking it to one franchise and just living up to the name of it for the rest of the time being. Honestly, I'm close to finishing up anyways. I just want to be done. I'm sick and tired of dealing with stupidity like this that goes on for decades. I mean, shit. Even Black Panther just rambling on complete nonsense about this is what irritates me the most about it. Black Panther, you have to understand, the Need for Speed that you want the most, it's never gonna come. It's never gonna come. Okay? So I'm gonna say this right now. You, as well as the other fans of Need for Speed that want the underground related gameplay and is most likely not gonna get it, I would like to give you two decisions on your lifeline as to racing game history when it comes to Need for Speed. Okay, so here's how it goes. Here's option A. You take what Need for Speed is for granted. It doesn't matter if Need for Speed is a track racing game, it doesn't matter if Need for Speed is an interstate and or highway racing game, and it doesn't matter if it's a rally game, or even a city racing game with car customization. You take what EA has, and you just play through it. Simple as that. Or option 2, you could just leave it where it is, don't ever bother about Need for Speed ever again, and just walk the fuck away. That's all I'm gonna say right there, and that's all I'm gonna say right now. And if you want, you can answer it your own free will. Honestly, you guys need to stop complaining about what Need for Speed is. It just gets annoying. It just gets annoying where people say that Need for Speed should be this, and Need for Speed remains to be like this. Literally, you guys are fucking delusional. This is why I don't even respect this kind of community anymore. I mean, I still respect it to a certain majority, but I cannot respect it to the point where I decide to stick in. No, this is one of the fewest reasons why I decide to be freelance instead of sticking into one game. Whatever, I'm losing my fucking brain cells because of this shit. One franchise. Anyways, I wasn't expecting to make this a very long video anyways, so I'm just gonna go ahead and simply say the best that this is what it is. Take what Need for Speed is, even if you don't like it, or just walk the fuck away. Don't ever bother buying the Need for Speed game. Leave it alone. Don't make another video on it. Walk away. Go play something else. Anyways, with that being said, my name is IceShadow01. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the video. Feel free to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. And Oh, by the way, before I start going off, I just want to say that I'm still working on making the Need for Speed Shift video, so do keep in mind that I'm almost done. I just need to do a little bit more clipping, and I might add some sound effects to it before I actually begin releasing it. And with that being said, this is Ice Shadow saying, I'll see you on to the next episode.